Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
You know why this. Yeah, let's go to slides for more. There's a point. Okay, so today we are looking at this like he's an architect, he's an urban designer. Okay, first of his kind, so-called urban designers. Edmund Bacon, very important person. He's from Philadelphia, and he's been like very instrumental. He has been just not a practitioner; he's both a practitioner as well as an academician, based in Philadelphia. He used to teach at the University of Pennsylvania, not to be mistaken with the state Penn State. No, it's not the Penn State. It's the University of Pennsylvania, and it's a private Ivy League university. And a lot of his work, a lot of this book, has been done from research conducted there. And obviously, he has been also heading the planning commission of the city of Philadelphia, where a lot of the ideas, what he's talking about, has been actually he has been able to accomplish them. So he's just not an educationist in that sense. He has been able to accomplish some of the ideas which he stood for. Now, what did he stand for? Also, that's very, very important. When does he works? His work is though he works from 1949 to somewhere in the 1970s, 80s also. Okay, it's a very critical time, I believe, in architecture. Okay, he starts with the post-war period, 1945. That's the time when he starts working, and we have to realize that post-war, like the type of architectural discourse which had gained precedence. Okay, which so-called is actually called the modern movement. Okay, lot of what Edmund Bacon stands for is a critique of the modern movement. Okay, like the modern movement with people like Corbusier, people who are imagining cities. Like I don't know. I'm sure you must have in your 4 years seen the famous vision of Paris for Corbusier. Have you all seen it? देखा है आप लोग ने? नहीं देखा है. I'm sure you must have seen in your theory of design class somewhere the Corbusian vision of Paris, where like he's completely says that the old city of Paris completely needs a rethinking, and there are these tall towers, extremely tall towers, which are placed in a grid in a complete park. So that's the imagination then, which is like connected with high-speed movement systems of expressway, highways, and roads. Okay, so it's a city based on the automobile. It's a city based on the principles of modern architecture. These high-rise buildings. Okay, where he thought that these high-rise buildings would house people, and the whole space beneath it, which is a park, okay, would be like enjoyed, and you would actually live in a city which is so-called environmentally friendly, whatever it stood for. Okay, but it was not to be so. Okay, in fact, uh, as the cities got built with these principles, a lot of cities got built. One with the idea of the idea of this whole idea of the garden. Okay, and it was, I believe, way back earlier, the Ebenezer Howard had actually proposed this idea of the garden city. Okay, and based on this principle, lot of suburban America, lot of suburbs even in Europe were built. Okay, which were built completely low density, extreme connected with super expressways, highways, and everything. Okay, and where individual houses were the main the unit of building. Okay, so and people like Bacon and people like let's say Jane Jacobs, people like Mumford criticize this big time. Okay, criticize this big time. Okay, I'm sure you must have heard of Jane Jacobs. She's a very important, I believe, person in American urbanism. And sure, though she's not a trained urbanist, but she's coming from a voice, a woman's voice. I think is very, very important. And her critique also is important of the modern city. he's very critical of Corbusier and works with the modern architects had done at that point of time. Another is obviously Mumford. But let me tell you, while they are in some way critiquing the modern movement, not that all their positions are same. Let me just tell you that not that all the positions are same. In fact, like what if you read a person like Jane Jacobs, her position is differently built as compared to what Bacon talks about. Okay, so we will look at what Bacon talks about. But I thought that I needed to give you this background so that we understand where Bacon is coming from. What is Bacon doing actually? Okay, and modernism's whole idea, this whole preconception with the object, the preconception with the object, the building itself, okay, is something which Bacon is challenging. Okay, Bacon is challenging the whole idea of like this whole idea of just the building, just the object. Okay, and he says that like this object itself, okay, is not a standalone thing. It cannot be a standalone thing. Okay, we cannot judge an object by its standaloneness or whatever iconic this thing nature that you create. Okay, the question which comes in, what does it do with the surrounds? And so that's something which Bacon talks about very, very strongly. Okay, and he, in fact, these are some of the founders of the of urban design. Let's understand, urban design is not a profession which existed before Corbusier. No way. Okay, urban design is coming from people like Edmund Bacon and their work. Okay, and yes, and the second thing which like he's talking about is this whole thing of like if you see modernism very very even education, the system of education that they created. Okay, there seems to be a negation of history. Okay, history seemed to be always like not a referent from where you can learn from. In other words, history was thought of a impedance. Okay, thought of कि अगर हिस्ट्री में आप हिस्ट्री अगर ज्यादा समझोगे तो उसमें से you cannot be creative, you cannot be so called creative. That was a belief, and still now there are that I think क्या बोलता still continues in our architecture colleges. Lot of like our architecture colleges का जो basic education this thing is based on the पढ़ाएंगे हिस्ट्री पढ़ा लेंगे ठीक है मींस बैनिस्टर फ्लेचर में पढ़ा लेता हूँ मगर वो सिर्फ जानने का है about those buildings, about their proportions and everything, but really it should not affect my design clearly. Okay, and it comes from a lot of writings by Luz and these people. Okay, but again they have been interpreted like that. It's not that many people have interpreted them in very different ways. So clearly Edmund Bacon does something very differently. He goes back to history. He just goes back to history. He says that he would learn from history, and he would learn from history about this whole act of city making. Okay, and obviously another thing which like very prevalent to the modern movement is the whole idea of the automobile. Okay, and what a person like Bacon is able to do is not only put the automobile in its own context, he's able to put other forms of movement also within the city, and that has been his experiment in Philadelphia. That has been his work in Philadelphia, where he has been able to so-called work with the simultaneous systems of movement which actually make are a part of our cities today. Okay, and a lot of that we don't understand. We don't understand. Like generally, modern like modernism and the way we have dealt with city, we have created this extremely Celios-based understanding of cities. So this whole idea of transport planning, which also emerged at that point of time, okay, looks at cities as if that you have to gain efficiency, you have to gain speed. Absolute, that's the way transport planning is imagined. Efficiency and speed is the final intent of that discipline, and then what happens is then you build cities like that, you build your highways, you build your expressways like that, which don't seem to have this relationship to the city. It doesn't create a city, and that's what I believe a person like Jacob is talking, she's talking about. She laments the whole idea of, well, this city is not for the human being. It's absolutely not for the human being. Okay, and I think Edmund Bacon also takes this. So there is some similarity, but Edmund Bacon does take up like the idea of this idea of the automobile quite a lot. Okay, and the idea of not automobile but idea of movement. Okay, and Bacon's whole also understanding has been that, and why Bacon? Why did we bring Bacon into the picture? Okay, is his experiments with understanding urban fabrics. Okay, this we thought is very important, very seminal for the class. Means you can learn from there. You can learn from there. You might not agree to his positioning. In fact, while I make the presentation, okay, you all should attentively listen what I'm saying. So the first question which I'll ask you is how do you find Bacon probably today placed? Why would you like let's have a critical vision of Bacon also? Okay, that I'll ask you, but I hope that you listen to what I'm saying and then you will be able to probably answer that question, but there'll be no answer in my clearly in what I'm presenting. Okay, so and amazingly, like what Bacon does is also is able to abstract uh, uh, the form of cities. He is able to abstract the form of cities. Some of the drawings are absolutely fabulous. Like that's where I believe urban designers learn from. Okay, so it's important that you learn about this method that he employs to look at the city. It's a formal method. Let me be very clear. It's a formal method. Okay, when I say a formal method, I'll explain to you when I mean after I end my this thing, my presentation. I'll tell you what do I mean when I say it's a formal method. Okay, and well, as just to quote some of what Bacon says is he says that the purpose of this book is obviously to explore the nature of this city making that have occurred in past, okay, and how they have emerged from ideas very clearly. That's something very important to him. Like so, he looks at history. He looks at the fact that how cities have emerged from central ideas. Idea is very important, though the idea is not that the idea is like the idea will be collectively shared, has to be collectively shared, then only the city form comes in. And also examines how this idea keeps changing over time through studies of history, the study of like some of this historic city. He sees how the idea has changed, and with the change of this idea, the whole way the city structure works has completely changed. Okay, that's something very interesting that he talks about. Okay, and again, the next line itself is a critique of the modern movement. He says in most of the cities, the buildings of character which lose their effectiveness because they're situated in out of way locations. There are also prominent sites occupied by uninteresting buildings which make no contribution to the surrounding area. Okay, and then he says it is the role of the urban design that there should be a skillful deployment of architectural energy so that the influence of fine building radiates outwards, articulating the whole fabric of the city. I think this is where I believe even when we first spoke of the class's intent is very much there. Okay, like we are talking about buildings, okay, which are no more enclosed in plots, which are no more to be seen singularly as objects, okay, but which have a dialogue with other objects. Okay, and then what becomes of architecture? He locates architecture there in that discussion, okay, within that complexity. And I've told you this, that there it is about people, it's about other fields also, which encompass when a set of like building come together. And it's not only about buildings, it's about even natural settings. Okay, like I won't go into that natural setting. I'll come to it a little later because I think we should connect to even what Sandeep was talking about. Okay, and so I'll connect to that a little later when we talk about what Bacon is talking about. So, but we will start. Okay, so what the first his first idea, like as I told you, like he's making a case. He's making a case from his book. Okay, I'll just introduce you the book. Lot of the book I'll share with you. You will have to read. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the book. I'm going to create a framework by which reading this book will become easier. Okay, that's what I can tell you. But yes, you are going to do a lot of the research on this book because clearly how to use Bacon is something like it's your decision. Okay, it's your decision. Clearly. Okay, just wait. Okay, background noise. Okay. So first and foremost, like he's, as I've told you, he's just not talking about the object. He's talking about how objects make space. Okay, and that is very, very important. The idea of space comes in. The idea of how objects themselves. So yes, he starts with the very basic, the idea of form and space, and how what he calls as universal space, how these forms relate to the universal space, but how certain elements which are objects, they start defining boundaries by the way they are placed. They might not be compound walls, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But the way the walls are put, the forms are put, there are visual space created, there are spaces created at the level of human beings. Okay, so these are like when he talks about articulating space. Okay, so these are taken from various contexts in cities where it is just not one object. No, absolutely not. But it is the ability of various objects coming together, joining together to be able to create space. Okay, and and he gives wide space also, very importantly, how events are located in space, because whenever you talk about people is not just they are in one building, absolutely not. They are in the streets, they are in between, and that's what he's talking about. The space is the street itself, the whether it be the space of the plaza itself. In fact, I think Shirish actually showed the Sienna at with the Campo and explaining how the creation of space is so important. Okay, and it's the buildings which help to create that space. Okay, because they hold events, and thus what comes in with space is the notion of time. Whenever you're holding events, when you are aware of that, okay, you are aware of the fact that you are designing time also. You are in some way manipulating time. Okay, because you're creating these settings where events take place. And that's very important, very important. And if you see the way this space has been created, clearly you see the notion of this arch, where like without saying also, you understand that there seems to be a leaving away to and coming into this, like a glimpse of something which opens up. So the understanding of how you are able to modulate space to be able to create this setting for events, not that it will be one event. And architects always make this mistake, that they think that event is something they can decide on. It's not nothing that you can decide on. I think you have to be able to create space where a set of daily events can happen. Okay, so your spatial abilities should be that they should be able to take diversity. Okay, it's not that whenever we name a space, oh, that's a space where children are going to eat. Absolutely, that's not going to happen. Okay, space can be used by people. They have their own what is called spatial practices, which might be very different from what the architect imagines. Okay, and another very important aspect when he's talking about space is the whole idea of movement, and space getting generated due to movement, due to sequences. Huh? And when you and see, like when you bring in movement now, you have to realize that you can move in many ways. You can move by feet. Okay, you can move by a car. You could have moved by a bullet train also. And now you please realize that now our cities have these so-called simultaneous movement systems. Okay, and everywhere the notion of space, the spatial experience is different. Okay, when you are walking in a space where when you're walking in a space, okay, the way you engage with objects, the way you engage with elements is very different from the way you would engage when you are in a car. Okay, when you would see even in the visual plane. So he's making a case for the whole understanding of just not the object, but clearly the space, and that is very critical to understand Bacon. I think that is fundamental. Okay, and this is something you have to realize about Bacon. Okay. Second, now he calls space as experience. Huh. So he says his whole idea is that look, when we are experiencing space, it is not that we are just looking at one object or one such, like the idea is how these systems come together, system of object comes together. Okay, that is very important, and that is the way the body experiences space. And he's making a case for that. He's making a case for the human being. Look at the human being as a body. Okay, and how it should sense space. Okay, and that is something a designer has to realize. Like when a designer, the designer might not be actually in control of the whole space, maybe control of only one object that he or she might design. But in that design of that one object also, which probably you will do also when you are doing this project, okay, you have to be able to add to this discussion of space, the whole idea of space and like idea of spatial experience. And then he talks about this many of these aspects of what he would consider as very important. Okay, like which creates this whole idea of highlights, because of these are again formal attributes. Okay, which create this whole experience when you are in a space. Okay, and it starts with the idea of meeting the sky and and what is called the skyline of a city. Okay, and this skyline is something obviously you have many vantage points. You can be in the street and look at what is the skyline. You can be at a top place and look at what is the skyline. Both are different. But the question of how the city meets the sky, okay, is a very important aspect that Edmund Bacon is talking about. And it is something we have to be careful about. It's something we have to understand, that we as designers are creating this relationship. And he laments the whole idea of modern architecture with his like absolutely insensitivity towards sky, with this TV, all this so-called this TV tumhara antennas and everything which he would have experienced in that point of time in the city. Okay, he laments that. He says that absolutely why we have missed, like that the treatment of the sky is absolutely like something which is not there in these cities. And he goes back to history and he talks about how in this, and the image that he's taking is from obviously from Europe. Okay, one of the cities in Europe. It doesn't matter. You could have taken any others. But the question is what he's seeing in this image. What is he recognizing in this image? Okay, how is he creating these conditions which he says are the basis to experience for a person who's walking. Okay, so then he talks about how the object meets the ground. How the object meets the ground is very important. It's very fundamental. Okay, and it is something which human beings are always experiencing. Okay, how the meeting the ground is another important aspect. Then he talks about points in space. Now, when he talks about points in space, he's talking about that in this composition, you will find that there are many elements which actually will in some way your eyes will be fixated on those. Your eyes will be fixated on those. Okay, maybe a feature in the sky, maybe a entrance lobby or something like that. Okay, and the way these are organized in relationship to each other. Okay, that's another important thing which he's talking about. Okay, and like as much as like the idea of the point is the notion of planes. Okay, obviously when a point moves, it creates a plane, as we would know. If point moves, it creates a line moves vertically, horizontally, it creates planes. Okay, so like, and in any of these like experiences, the eye is always doing that. The eye is either fixated at certain points. The eyes also moves through planes. It could be colonnades, it could be created by colonnades. In this case, it is created by this curve. Okay, so these are things which are very important to the creation of space. Okay, so and obviously depth is a very important thing which is talking about is just not the facade, absolutely not the concern with the facade. like even today we have this whole business of saying, oh, we want elevations, as if the elevation is the way to understand architectural form making. But it's not that. It's not that way. The way you place your object, the way it creates a depth in relationship with the surround is very important to him. Okay. Then this whole idea of ascent and descent, how you're moving up and down. Okay, and in this picture also there are the steps. Okay, and like these relationships of how you create space through ascent and descent. It's a very important strategy which even architects use. And he's talking about that again and again. Okay, how you use this the whole idea of ascent and descent. And yes, the whole idea of convexity and concavity. Okay, like with both you can bring in attraction, and with another one you can like open up. You can open up. So these are possible ways you can manipulate your planes to create such experiences. And the last one he's talking about is this relationship to man. When you're creating these objects, okay, the man has a certain size. Okay, you have done and like the whole idea of anthropometrics of a certain of a human person. Okay, and when he's talking about this image itself, the way the base of the column, you can see the base of the column where it has a relationship to the human being. Okay, it's located, becomes very important, or whether it be the railing also. Okay, so finally the architecture and its relationship to the walking human being, okay, is a very important thing that he talks about. And remember, he's talking about, like, let's understand that he's talking now about the creation, the architecturing of space. It's not so much the architecturing of the object. These are principles which he sets up for the architecturing of space. And that is very important. That's something fundamental to Edmund Bacon, that he's actually in very importantly trying to tell you that it's just not the object, it's the complete ensemble which becomes extremely important. Okay. So again, like Tumara, obviously, as I've told you, he's learned from history. He's looking at history, and he's looking at how this whole idea of evolution of form happens in various times. Okay, and in some way, when he's looking at history, it's very natural of him to compare. It's very natural of him to compare. He's very like he's talking about the medieval city from where he's learning. He's talking about layers of the city during the Renaissance, the Baroque, and obviously the modern times where he's a part of. Okay, and in some way he's talking about the crisis of this modern by these two question marks that he placed under representation and realization. Okay, while he's able to identify clear aspects with each of these columns. Okay, during different time period in history. Okay, he's saying that when it comes to this whole idea of what is space, okay, when space and time are relative, okay, what is it with representation and realization, we have not yet been able to grasp that well. Okay, and that is something which he puts during his point of time. Maybe I don't know. Maybe in today's time you might have answers of how you represent. Okay, and even at I think when he's talking about, he's well aware of digital representation and these phenomena which have taken I think precedence now. But clearly this is something which he's talking about. And when he's talking about, like, remember the from the medieval to the Baroque, okay, things must have changed, but the movement, the system of movement, medieval was clearly walking. Okay, in the Baroque, you might, on the Renaissance, maybe in the end part of Renaissance and Baroque, you would find probably the horse carriage coming in. Okay, which is also like a much more slower system of movement. But when it comes to the modern thing, there is the automobile coming in, and automobile sets a very different dimension. Okay, and that's where he's saying that you have this notion of multiple systems of movement coming in. And as I've told you, movement is one of the critical aspects of space creation that Edmund Bacon is completely obsessed with. Okay, so if you go to the medieval design, he says that, well, the idea is to be aware of the total environment. Okay, and there are simultaneously several objects from various viewpoints. Okay, but the idea is the construction is very closely integrated to its environment. The way a person would work, the way the creator would work also. Okay, the way like it's not that it is separated from the immediate. You're working within the context. You're working within, and which is something we lament. We say that modern architecture doesn't do it, but that point of time, given the technology, given the way the way buildings would be made, okay, will be conceived and made. Sorry, would be conceived and made. Okay, it is very much integrated in the system that you will have to be closely integrated to the environment. Okay, and when he talks about this whole idea of Renaissance, and Renaissance is the first time when, if you understand, even there are experiments with the perspective being done. Okay, I hope you have studied the perspective, but it's the Renaissance where it is located. Historically, if you locate the perspective, it is the idea of the perspective comes from the Renaissance, and you will see a lot of Renaissance painting, lot of Renaissance architecture. Okay, creating objects which look as if they are created from a one-point perspective. Okay, absolutely. So that's what Edmund Bacon is talking about. It gives precedence to the individual. It gives precedence to the individual, while the medieval might not be individual might not be so important. It will obviously be the collective, and the collective would be controlled by the religion, controlled by the church. Okay, controlled maybe by the guild, but that's very important to understand how space making happens. And this is what he's talking about historically, that you can actually in your city see these shifts. You are able to recognize the shift in city structure if you are able to understand the way they are apprehended. Okay, the way they are apprehended. And then he talks about the Baroque, which takes forward the Renaissance. Okay, but clearly it talks about multiple planes, but with single vanishing points as yet. But today you know that the single vanishing point just doesn't work. There is absolutely no point from where you can say that the single vanishing point work, because like today you might be in a plane, you might be in a car, I don't know, you might be in a bullet train, the speeds are different. Okay, so completely it just changes. The whole idea of the way you experience space is different completely. Okay, and that's what he talks about, this whole notion of the space-time relativity. So this is a very important, I believe, chart that he makes. And as I'm saying, lot of if you are able to understand what Bacon is talking about, lot of what will follow, you'll be able to understand what he's doing. Okay, so then, and again, when he's looking at this whole notion of, as I've told you, he's a person who is very, one of the important thing that he's looking at is movement, and he looks at movement from the idea of the modern city. And so clearly it is not the object as a singular element there that is concerned. He's always concerned how do you design experience when you are moving. Okay, so, and I think I've spoken about this whole relationship of mass and space very articulately when those earlier drawings were shown of Edmund Bacon. Okay, so it's just not mass; it's all about space and their relationships. Okay, and that is something you have to remember. That's something you will be looking at very nearly, even when you are handling the placing of this building today in your neighborhoods. Okay, so you cannot say, oh, I'm just going to design an icon. The way your building is able to evolve space becomes very critical. Okay, and then he talks about this whole notion of the how do you build a continuous experience. Okay, how do you build a continuous experience, not experience which are disjunct. Okay, or are you able to create a setting for continuous experience without it being obviously giving a lot of flexibility. There can be many events that can happen, and you have seen his concern with the whole idea of events. Okay, which are how you experience the idea of space. Okay, simultaneous continuities, very clearly, as I've told you, that's a challenge of its time. Okay, you have very many different systems of movement, and moment you have many systems of movement, how do you like design this? How do you design simultaneous continuities? How do you design a city for a car? And then from a car you move into a let's say a mode of walking. What do you do? Does the design respond to that? So these are important things which I believe he's talking of, and like when you, both the things, when relationship of movements, when I say relationship of movements, it might just articulated how so important it is that when you're moving from one movement system, you're going into the another. Okay, you have to realize that it cannot be the same formal. Like you have to realize, I've told you that the body experiences the space in a very different way. Okay, like you need certain relationship with objects, you need certain relationship with elements. So moment you change the system, how do you bring the simultaneity? Okay, the medieval city designers had to only design cities for walking, but this is not anymore true. Okay, so this is something he's talking about, and very importantly, what Edmund Bacon is talking about is this whole idea of relationship with the natural phenomena. Okay, how you bring relationship with not only the built, the natural phenomena has to be a part of this system, has to be carefully thought about. It cannot be just yeah आपने छोड़ दिया. It's like most of our way where we build roads, where we build it's like that. वो छोड़ दिया, वो that space is leftover type of space. No, it cannot be. For Edmund Bacon, it cannot be. Absolutely no way. Okay, it has to be designed. It has to be choreographed. Absolutely choreographed. And from that choreography comes the whole understanding of rhythm in time. Only when you can do that will you be able to build rhythms. Okay, that's something very important. And like let's see what he says about movement system. He says movement systems are related to the natural or man-made topography. So natural is something which has been very clearly articulated. They must take into account the nature of terrain, and the natural features or structures that are part of it. They can serve to emphasize, dignify, or give new meaning to the churches, the spire, the public building, and to the historic monuments that have special significance in the community. This is the importance of movement. Okay, what he's saying that the way we move, the way we organize movement, we can give new meanings, and that is something very very important. You will see that even when you are looking at your neighborhoods, how in different time periods of evolution, by changing movement system, places have lost their meaning. Yes, places have lost their meaning. Okay, just because you tweak something, you cut off a relationship, and that has completely made that place absolutely redundant. Okay, while building that relationship must have been important, because yes, there are, and it's so much in our cities, because our cities are dealing with the simultaneity of movements. Okay, you have the metro, you have the automobile. They're all different modes. You experience them differently, and that's what he's telling you, that you as a designer need to be able to modulate these things. Okay, and so that's so important for him. Okay, and just to give an example, a Japanese example, and like if you see, like so this is the main shrine that he's talking about, and just to understand how this whole relationship, which is very very orthogonal, very very like geometric, completely changes when you come into the precinct and you are more into the mode of walking. Okay, it completely changes the whole nature of the fabric, the way the relationships are built. Okay, are completely different. Like you must be using the car to come here. Okay, and you are emphasizing this whole axis, which is a very very like very different experience. It's a completely axial movement where which creates the understanding and gives importance, gives meaning. Okay, but moment you come inside, okay, the whole idea of symmetry, the order changes, because here you are a completely different. You're experiencing space by walking. Okay, so the nature changes, and in fact, like so the whole idea of symmetry is no more about symmetry, it's more about balance. It's more about balance. It's no more about symmetrical करना है. Okay, it's more about एक balance achieve करना है, एक visual balance achieve करना है. So when you see this image, this elevation, it's not the elevation has symmetry, but yes, it somewhere due to the way the lengths and heights have been organized. Well, you can go into the formula. You might be better off to do a formal analysis here. Okay, there seems to be a balance. Okay, and this is what he's talking about. This is an example which he is giving us to understand how simultaneous movement systems can be through a case study, how it can be understood. Okay, so I'll go to the next one. Okay, and yes, so he talks about the whole idea of creating space, and he talks about the importance of the person who's the architect, and the person or the whoever is in some way like wanting the architecture, whoever is the client wanting the architecture. It might be an institution, it might be represented by a group of people, but it might be, and the way like both of them work to create a understanding of object and space. Okay, so in some of the cases he's talking about like, well, we can achieve full unity. Okay, he's saying that we can achieve duality. Okay, and way we organize space, we can achieve dominance and subdominance, which means like subdominance, like the way you organize the gray versus the darker gray. Okay, versus the whole idea of the endotopic and the exotopic. Just to explain what is the endotopic, I think that will give you a much better understanding. Okay, you can see this darker gray as an object and the white as a space. Okay, just reverse it. Just reverse it. See this as a open space and see the white as an object. You will realize what it means. Okay, both have different meanings. Both have different meanings. Generally, modern architecture would look at this as an object, the black as an object. Okay, and this as space around it to appreciate your so-called so-called formal icon that you have created. But there could be another way of creating this space, is that this is the closed space and this is the object, where what it does, it starts engaging with people, it starts engaging with systems of movement. Okay, so the whole idea of what how design wants to be, what he's talking about is a relationship between the eye of the architect and the eye of the institution. Okay, that's what he's talking about. Okay, and then he's giving examples. Okay, how this eye, the building itself, has taken different form along with the architects giving it manifestation in different conditions, in different environments. So he looks at a fort, a castle rather. Okay, and he says, look at the way the architecture responds when it meets the ground. When it meets the ground, for him, I told you, meeting the ground is absolutely important. How the intermediate environment is articulated and way it meets the sky, both are important. I have told you. Okay, the highest articulation is in the sky. Okay, while it meets the ground, being a castle. Okay, this is a response to its architecture, which is highly solid, absolutely not perforated. Okay, because it is a hostile environment that is dealing with. Okay, so this is the way he talks about how form can respond, and then he takes the notion of three different settlements on top of hills. Okay, and he looks at how these articulations, one can be lot of it can be that it reaches out. It's a much more open type of response. Okay, the one which are much more intermediate, the way like this geometry, like it looks at the way squares are required or rectangles are required for useful rooms, but still encloses itself as a circle for the notion of defense. Okay, and clearly the most inward looking is the tower itself, which is also for defense, but primarily these three are for defense, but the responses are very different. Okay, and lot of this diagram making, okay, if you see like Edmund Bacon is quite influenced by a person called Paul Klee. Okay, and Paul Klee actually makes he's from the Bauhaus. He actually makes these diagrams. Okay, and these diagrams are something which he is doing independently, completely independent explorations. Okay, of various possible ways like diagrams can give a certain character. But what he's able to do is he's able to relate Paul Klee's diagrams to various understandings of cities. Okay, so he's looking at cities which are very inward looking. Okay, cities which have been created with the whole notion of inward looking, cities which are created with this whole notion of, okay, trying to reach out to the periphery, trying to reach out and not just be inward looking. Okay, so in various combinations, he looks at these diagrams of Paul Klee and looks at how the cities have been structured. And this is something he's like, as I've told you, like he's interested in the spatial structuring and how objects create the spatial structuring. Okay, so he's looking at a larger relationship. Even when you're looking at your neighborhoods, you will have to be able to identify these sort of relationships. Maybe, see, these are not relationships, these are relationships man might build by through its own social practices of using space, okay, in the level of the walking city itself. But you will have to be able to understand this. You will have to be able to abstract this. This is a very important process, I believe Edmund Bacon is telling us. Okay, and his whole act of representation is to be able to create these abstractions of cities. Okay, and we will see some of the experiments that he does with Venice and Rome. Okay, these are two cities we are going to take, and we are going to look at his examples of Venice and Rome. And Venice, no, not Venice, Athens and Rome. Athens and Rome. Amazingly, he's able to create these abstract drawings. He talks about this whole act of form making, okay, and he talks about the whole idea of city making through this notion of involvement. Okay, now what he talks about involvement, let's understand. Now, this is something very, very important, I believe. He takes his clues from this psychoanalyst educator called Erickson, okay, who actually explores this notion of play. Okay, but what he says that play, even when you are playing, it has got rules. It might be play, but it has got rules. Okay, in fact, the play becomes more interesting if it has got rules and it allows you diversity. Okay, without the whole idea of the like every play you will understand has certain rules and regulations in which it is created, which he calls limits. Okay, very clearly it is city making is similar. City making is also considered as a play. Okay, a play involves you, but okay, it gives you freedom. It gives you freedom. Okay, as architects and urban designers, we need to realize that. Okay, you are a part of the play. You are absolutely a part of the play. Okay, generally architects, the way we are trained, we think we are heroes. Absolutely, we are in control of everything. But Edmund Bacon is saying no. Edmund Bacon is saying that actually this whole notion of play can happen through time. Okay, happen through time. Okay, over time, the rules you have created of space making can make environments which are forbidding or environments which are facilitating. Okay, and this is very, very important because like when we look at informal settlements, when we look at slums and all these things, okay, we realize that today slums are not all that chaotic. Please don't think they are chaotic. Absolutely not chaotic. If you understand order, okay, slums have an order which they have where there are certain rules of the game which are set. Okay, like as I've said, the rules of the games, I think I must have spoken of it, might be about access. Okay, the roots of the games might be about respect for each other's notion of light and ventilation. Okay, within that game,
I can create a complex looking absolutely, it looks disordered. It doesn't have that so-called orthogonal geometry, but I can create cities. Okay, and that is something he's talking about, and it's very, very important. And well, this is what he gives a notion of this understanding of a certain principle of from a square, how you can build, and this is today in today's scientific this thing it would be called the fractal. Okay, that you recognize the fractal. Okay, and how fractals have geometry, but the fractal geometry itself can be used in many ways depending upon the principle you have set, okay, to create extremely complex forms which might otherwise look disordered. Okay, it's there in nature, absolutely there in nature. Okay, that's how things get, and he recognizes this, and he says that that requires like it requires a sense of involvement. Okay, and and again, very important like thing which he's referring to, and he looks at similarities with the work of again Paul Klee's work, Paul Klee's sketches, and this Acropolis in Asia Minor, okay, which has been built over time, completely built over time. It's incremental creation of time in time, okay, of the Acropolis. And but he says that there seems to be within these two this thing sketches certain relationships, formal relationships, which are actually understood by these curves and these lines and these way the lines meet to create this foci, okay, which are there used as organizing principles, which have evolved over time, not done by one architect, absolutely not done by one architect, and that is something so fundamental. Okay, so when you, and in fact, let me tell you, Edmund Bacon has affected a lot of people. In fact, I know people who actually are in Indian academia who have been who are Edmund Bacon student. One of them is the person from Gemini Mehta. He's from Baroda. Gemini Mehta is from Baroda. So he actually has very recently written a book on Fatehpur Sikri. And you can see if you read that book, the way he analyzes Fatehpur Sikri is very similar to what Edmund Bacon, and he's Edmund Bacon's student. Obviously, he studied at the University of Pennsylvania. Okay, he's Edmund Bacon's student. The way he writes that book, you will recognize that he's indebted to Edmund Bacon. Though he speaks about Edmund Bacon in the book, he's absolutely indebted to Edmund Bacon, because Fatehpur Sikri is another place which has been created through time, through time. And if you yet go through Fatehpur Sikri, you will see an amazing continuity in terms of experience, in terms of the way the body actually moves through space. How was that possible without the idea of Cartesian planning? Okay, and that is something I believe even Gemini Mehta has taken from the learnings of Edmund Bacon. Okay, so it's very, very important. So now I think I come to one of the cities, the first cities, and like as I'm saying, I like his diagramming, absolutely fantastic diagramming of cities. And what he has done is called abstraction. He's abstracted the cities. It's not that he has actually shown the whole city with all its and remember, this is something, an ability you all will also have to have. Okay, depending upon the way you have experienced, to be able to represent your own neighborhoods, and how change must have happened, transformations must have happened over time due to varied understanding and changes in ideas. Like I've told you, changes in ideas comes to cities getting created because earlier they were walking fabrics. Okay, then at a certain point of time, a city like Mumbai has also seen horse carriage. City like Mumbai has also seen the automobile coming, and now you have another layer, the metro coming. Okay, the question is, are you able to abstract the way space is getting evolved in these different systems of space creation? Okay, and he looks at Athens, and he's able to abstract Athens right from 600 BC to 287 AD. And this notion of how these two important spaces of Athens I hope that like you all have looked at Athens in history, na? थोड़ा सा काम किया होगा ऐसे buildings पे. No, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
done some. Yeah, I'm किया है ना?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. So these are two important spaces of Athens. One is the Acropolis. Okay, one is the Agora. So you all must have heard of these two spaces, the Agora and the Acropolis. And he traces how this Agora and Acropolis are actually evolved. The city structure is evolved by this pathway, this path of movement. Now, what is this path of movement? What is this path of movement that he's talking about? This blue line that he's talking about, this blue line which he cuts through. He's seeing the evolution of the Agora. Okay, and how Agora has evolved over time. Okay, some of the very seminal principles of architectural form creation in the Western world are actually embedded right here. Okay, the way the arcades we actually in today's time like think about how arcade is a way of space creation. All the experiments are in the Agora. Okay, these are the first creations of such experiments. Okay, and this blue line is actually a festival path. Okay, and these festival paths are paths. If you understand Greek society during that time, these are the paths which were starting in some of the gates which are outside the city, some of the places which are outside the city, and how these festival paths end in the Acropolis, which is a place for events. Okay, which is the place which would have the theaters, would have all the architecture of performance. Please realize that a lot of architectural today that you know of gets created, is embedded in this history. Okay, the idea of the theater is embedded in this history, and the theater is come through this whole idea of this system of movement which is at that point of time people are moving due to mass moving due to religion. Okay, today we don't move like this. Today we don't move due to religion, though some of our cities do. If you know, there are yatras in our cities. Okay, and yatras are very important. Earlier cities used to move in mass because only of yatras, not because of other things. Today we don't move. Today we don't move like this. Today we move because of much more secular reasons. We move because of work. Okay, you have to go to work by the train in Churchgate. Your city is actually structured like that. Okay, so please understand that how critical movement is. Okay, and that's what Edmund Bacon is trying to emphasize. We take movement for granted. We believe because we live in industrial time, we believe that that is the way all cities should move. It's not so. Absolutely not so. Okay, there were cities earlier in times which have never seen such secular movement. Okay, this secular movement which we know of today has happened somewhere in Europe, in London, when the London metro came in. Before that, cities never used to move like this. Cities were bounded entities. I think Shirish has also shown you that these diagrams which Spiro Kostov and all these people talk about cities as bounded entities. Okay, but when cities break the boundary due to new movement systems, the whole idea of experience of movement changes. But movement is very critical. And what Edmund Bacon is doing, he's looking at this whole notion of movement, looking at the whole notion of space. Okay, and in combination of both together, he's looking at how the city structure has evolved. And he's looking at, as I've told you, he's looking at two important spaces in Athens, okay, which are the Acropolis and the Agora, and how they evolve through time. And this is one of the friezes of the Parthenon. Okay, and it actually depicts this whole system of this movement, which has order. Okay, which has like people participating in it. So this is one of the representations of that movement system, and how that movement system is so important. Like it is. Please understand, these are the initial, it has initially embedded in itself, like from where the Olympics have got even got its history here. Okay, and amazingly Edmund Bacon, through with his students, as I've told you, in the University of Pennsylvania, Okay, he studies this evolution through making forms, and he's talking about this Greek way of making space, where it is a combination, but very importantly, you can see how these colonnades, they envelop the space. They envelop the space. They envelop the notion of space. Yet it is open. It does take the natural into it. So it's a combination of the natural as well as the idea of enclosures. Enclosures where simple like objects are not there. They seem to be subservient. They seem to be subservient, excepting the temple you can see there. The temple, which has a certain form of formal independence, but the way the temple itself is placed, it seems to be subservient to the space. It seems to be like this whole nature of what he's drawn as the movement path. Okay, the space slowly and steadily when it evolves, and the elements which evolve over time, okay, in this space, and these, as I've said, these spaces, as you will realize in history, would be spaces, which so-called would house the democratic activities of the Grecian times. Okay, and that is something like the which is being, I believe, which is trying to show in like how from like just playing of few elements and holding the edge, it then goes on building to hold, give definition to the edge. Okay, not disturb the path. The blue path yet remains, but within the blue path there are pauses. Okay, there are these places which take up activities of different nature. Okay, so but these two axes, the temple axis and the blue path, yet remains as the ordering principle. But within that ordering principle, you are able to place the elements. Very important. Like today, when you are even placing your buildings, you have to be able to realize in your neighborhoods, you have to be able to reveal these blue paths and yellow lines to us. Okay, just as Edmund Bacon is doing. Remember that Edmund Bacon, like he is revealing this for Athens. This is a story which, with drawing which he has built, is from the narrative which he has understood of Athens. Okay, he's been able to bring it forward to us. Okay, and that is so important. Before that, I have told you, like the whole idea of modern architecture looking at history was very, very different. And this whole idea, lens of looking at the history and revealing this process, this method is so important of Bacon. Okay. Um, and I've shown you this, and again he's showing, and this is a very interesting example where he shows how during the Greek times, okay, the agora in Meletius, okay, it evolves and it creates a space much more open, but it creates a space by this idea of the edge. It does create the space, did not be enclosed, but he's slowly seeing from the Greek to the Roman, same place starts getting enclosed. And not only enclosed, he starts seeing that the Romans and their obsession with different types of functions, and like they create like a series of rich enclosures. Okay, they are creating these enclosures, like, but they are enclosed. And so he's saying he's seeing the same space. Okay, how it evolves, how an evolution happens, and in built to the idea of the evolution, this is the whole idea of ideation itself. Okay, the perception of space during the Greek is different. Okay, and slowly and steadily, the same space, the Romans are able to adopt it and adapt and transform, and what they think about space, that they're able to bring in. And with this, we move into Rome. Okay, we'll see Rome and how Bacon has analyzed Rome, and I think this transition was important. And you just look at the Roman city, you will find things are different. Okay, it's not like the Greek city. Okay, things have shifted, things have changed. There are pathways, there are triumphal pathways. In fact, so important to the even to the Roman city. Okay, but you will start seeing the emergence of objects. You will start seeing the emergence of the Colosseum. You start seeing the emergence of freestanding objects. Okay, you will start seeing the emergence of like enclosed spaces. Okay, the fora. Okay, very important to the Roman. city. Okay. But yet this city, it is not like it is an object like city. It's not a city which will be similar to object like experience where your modern cities have these buildings. If you go to Bandra Kurla complex, some part of Bandra Kurla complex, you have these building, all icons. It's not like that. They also create space, and what Edmund Bacon is talking about, the way they create space, the Roman city creates space. If you can see the way they relate to the ground, okay, the way they relate to the ground. If you see, though they're objects, the Colosseum seems to have an arcade or has an arcade. Okay, the Fora here has an arcade, which builds in a relationship with a human being in the ground. Okay, so when you see this space which is created by this object, this seems to have a meaning there. It's not, it doesn't look like it's a leftover space, chhod diya space, or like if you see modern planning, it has a lot of these leftover spaces. Okay, and he calls it the creation of space through compression. Very different from the Greek. Absolutely different from the Greek. We have shown you how the Greeks actually, like, slowly and steadily enclose space. They have the natural in it. They bring the natural in it. Okay, but the Romans, obviously with their the idea of the imperial power that they have. Okay, the notion of architecture changes, and you understand Rome is one of the most important cities at that point of time in history. Okay, and it comes from, as I'm saying, it comes from Western perspective. Okay, it's not that I agree to it, but still, it is one of the most important cities. Okay, and here he looks at the abstraction again. The abstraction. This is a diagram which he has created. Edmund Bacon has created, and I'm telling you, like, that's his ability, his fundamental ability. And I think I'm so like fascinated by, even as urban designers till today, I believe we go back to Edmund Bacon for his ability to make these drawings, make these abstractions. Okay, where it's so essential. He makes these drawings so essential, so important. It's not that he has everything. He doesn't have the clutter of the city. He's able to choose the elements, okay, which creates, which is important, which is fundamental to the creation of the city. Okay, and he's able to locate them in his own way. Okay, and that's, as I'm saying, that's an ability which or a method which you can use also. I'm not saying that you might take this forward, but you can use this method to be able to understand how, and as I'm saying, looking at it linearly through time, and then looking at it through a snapshot during the present time, he's able to create how space gets created. Okay. Um, yeah. So Rome itself, what you've seen here changes, absolutely changes. Medieval Rome is absolutely not like this. Okay, Rome within this boundary that you see, sees evolution over time. And when the medieval period emerges, okay, where the church is very, very important. The Rome has clearly lost its imperial power. Okay, and at that point of time, okay, the whole idea of Rome and this whole idea of these important structures in Rome, it's in complete ruins. After that, Rome itself as a city, okay, it gets its image, okay, and its structure by these important, extremely important locations, these churches, okay, but these churches are located in pilgrim paths. So if you can see this notion of medieval Rome, okay, you can see these movement systems again. Very, very important. These movement systems are very, I've been talking about these movement systems, and these are pilgrim paths, and how pilgrims would move from one of these structures to other. If you see in Indian cities, they still exist. In Banaras, I know that you are doing Banaras. Okay, one of you are doing Banaras. In my group, there is Banaras. This is fundamental. This drawing is fundamental. Okay, if you don't understand how like yatras move, okay, how parikramas move, you don't understand the Indian city. Absolutely not. Okay, and Rome has had a time period in history okay, where like people would move the way they are. Okay, they would be moving, and this is after Rome has seen what is called an imperial understanding of Rome, where imperial understanding is so different. Imperial understanding is like it is a city which is structured because it is able to rule the world. It is able to rule the world through conquests. Okay, and Rome is a manifestation. Imperial Rome is a manifestation of that. Okay, but this Rome is a very different Rome. After the fall of the imperial power, the Rome which comes in becomes a completely different Rome. But let's see its evolution. Because today, what we know of Rome is St. Peter's, finally. Okay, and the plaza near St. Peter's. So let's look at its evolution. So this shows the very important pathways of the pilgrim paths and what a pilgrim would visit in Rome. Okay, but sooner or later, as the church gets importance, okay, the church starts putting its own vision into Rome. Okay, the church like is the authoritarian regime in Rome at a certain point of time. Okay, it is the center point of religion, the Christian religion. Okay, and it starts, and one of the priests, Sixtus, okay, starts saying that again, this whole idea of this circumambulatory path, which are created by these yatras and these pilgrimages, okay, are not the way to go forward. Okay, what he imagines this city is this whole notion of this axis, and that is the evolution of Baroque Rome. That is the evolution of Baroque Rome. Okay, and in this axis, he places very fundamental elements. He places the Roman obelisks. He places the Roman obelisks. Okay, so and this is a vision he creates for Rome. Not that during his time he's able to achieve it. But the idea is important. He says that this is the idea of the city we should create. This idea to actually realize this idea, to realizes Sixtus' vision of Rome. It takes time, but so powerful was the idea that it does achieve this idea over time. Okay, and as you can see, like over this medieval city of Rome, like these axes are drawn in areas which were certainly clearly they were important, but they were now connected with these axes. Okay, this is very important in history because you will see cities actually learning from this example and then replicating. Like Haussmann has learned from this. Please realize Haussmann has not done something which actually he can say that he has done it. He's learned from Sixtus, and Sixtus is Rome. Okay, and that's the idea which he's creating. This is the Sixtus's vision of Rome. Okay, where you can see these like very important plazas, very important buildings in plazas, trying to and this accesses creating the new vision of Rome. Okay, and I don't know whether there is an exam. Oh, okay, sorry.
Paul, can you go back to that? Yeah, can you stay here? So this
Okay,
diagram.
Shirish, you want to add something?
Yeah, this diagram is very important to actually know, because what you see is the fortification. Okay, and in an earlier diagram also he keeps this as a constant, the fortification and the river. Okay, so he in Bacon's diagramming there is always a kind of a consistency that allows us to see the variables. So when we are diagramming, I think that is very important to notice. Yeah,
I'll show the diagram. Shirish, I'll show the diagram. Just you. I don't know where my screen has gone here. Okay, my screen is here. Okay. Okay, I'll show you the diagram. Wait. I don't know why I moved out of this. So same thing what Shirish is talking about. This look at this carefully. Look at this boundary wall. Carefully look at the structure of Rome. Go back. Okay, same city wall imperial Rome. Okay, look at that structuring. Look at the spatial language. I told you how the spatial language got created. There are objects. Clearly, there are objects. Colosseum and all these are objects right here. Okay, but again, like as much as the Greek this thing's way of making space would be, through the compression of these objects, space is getting created in the ground. It's not that the ground is just like giving an object like nature. And look at what has happened in the same drawing, same river, how a city changes its complete way of experiencing itself. Okay, and as I'm saying, this is what, and this is so important. Like it's Edmund Bacon who's looking at history and revealing this. That's why Edmund Bacon is so important. That's why I like him. But I told you I'll ask you a question at the end. Why do you think? Probably. And then look at the objects getting created because of this notion of the axis. You can understand these are objects which are in some way holding the axis. They're holding the axis. They form the end of the axis. Okay. And this is so important to Rome. This building is so important to Rome. This building has everything about that period of architecture where this building forms the end of the axis. That is, and it gives it the importance to the Christian world. Okay, so and the whole notion of perspective, the whole notion of how you are moving, the whole notion of symmetry, whole notion of approach is so important through these creation, through these obelisks, through these buildings that that are getting created. Okay, you cannot look at this building, St. Peter's, just as one building. No, you have to look at this building through the creation of this plaza. Then you are able to understand how this building sits in that framework of the city itself that is being created by and this is an image from the building to the plaza. Okay, how the obelisk is located, Roman obelisk is located, how the path is getting created. Okay, and how restructuring of Rome has been done. Absolute restructuring of Rome has been done. Okay, breaking buildings and everything to be able to give shape to this. Later on, it will get much more formalized shape. Now you can see here. You can see the way these colonnades are getting created to give to create this sense of the plaza. If you go to Rome now, this is what you're going to experience. This is what Rome is about, St. Peter's, and absolutely this plaza, which is so important to Rome. But it gets created through time. It gets created. It's not just one piece of architecture. It's a piece of architecture which Sixtus has imagined, and Sixtus has never been able to see this through his lifetime. But that image remained, that idea remained, that diagram remained. Okay, and that's what like Edmund Bacon is reminding us to. That's the final creation. Okay, it's a creation, it's a diagram in process. Obviously, when you go there, it's much more formalized today. Okay, but yes, this is the formation of the plaza. Okay, so I'll end with this diagram. I love this diagram. Okay, this is Venice. This is absolutely Venice. But look at the simplicity of representation. Venice as represented, as you know, through water. Okay, through its important buildings, its plazas, and just pedestrian connectors. Okay, I love this diagram. This, like, there cannot be, like, and I hope that's what I'm telling you. I hope that you all are able to even learn from Bacon. Okay, as much as I'm saying that Bacon has a certain method which is so important. Okay, and that's why his contribution to urban design is this ability, and this is an ability which you all are going to deal with when you all are going to place your buildings into your neighborhoods. Okay, now I will stop here, but it's not that Bacon has like stopped his experiments with only Rome and Venice. He actually does this even with his own design in Philadelphia. Okay, when I've told you he has been the chief of the city commission of Philadelphia. He has been able to create like a urban form of Philadelphia, which is unique. Okay, and that book, like I'm going to share this book with you. It's called The Design of Cities. I have a soft copy of it. Okay, so I'll share that book with you, and you should go through these experiments and understand how he has used the same methodology to understand other cities. Okay, and like mind you, some of these drawings that he built, some of these, and these drawings are just not planar. Some of these drawings are 3D drawings of these plazas, which are amazing. Which are amazing. Okay, so without much this thing, I will stop my presentation here, but I will share that book with you with the hope that you will go through this book. Okay.
Paul, can you share the book in the files section on the Teams?
I'll share it. I'll share it. I'll share it. Now, just I'll end with one question I had to ask. Okay, I told you that I'll ask you a question. Okay, and with that we can start our discussion also. So how would you look at Bacon critically? How would you look at Bacon critically? Okay, or do you have any critical observations on what I said on his methods? Okay. Anyone wants to? You understand when I say critically what I mean, na? In fact,
I can pick names.
Yeah, Shirish, you won't add because I know that you might.
No, I will
know,
not ask.
might
I will not
know.
ask. I'll pick names of students who should ask.
Who should ask these questions? Who are disturbed? Who should be disturbed by Bacon?
Be disturbed by it. Yeah.
Who should be disturbed by Bacon? चलो बोलो हम लोग काफी हिंट दे दिया आपको. So ज्यादा हिंट मैं दे नहीं सकता हूँ.
Nishanti, you have some observation? Nishanti, are you there?
कोई नहीं है.
Okay, I'll pick another one. Mohit.
Somebody's left. Why is somebody leaving?
Ishan. Dalika.
Hello. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. I think it's really relevant because I was actually going through another book, which is The Image of the City. And I think this one makes I think what the theories that he has come up with are like more relevant, I feel, in terms of urban design, because it sort of also looks at a cultural layer and not just like defines the basic structure of the city, or like the urban the urban stratification. But when I look at the image of the city, I was actually trying to like see how it's different from the other theories, and it just sort of focuses on like the 5 layers or the 6 layers, and not includes the other aspects. So I think this one, when I was like looking at the presentation, I think it makes much more sense and a difference to me in looking at urban design as a whole. And I think it is more relevant to even our context, because even cities in India are like really highly cultural. So I mean, it makes a lot of more sense when we look at our site and then look at this presentation and the way the author has worked.
Okay, good observation. So you're looking at, let's say, a comparison between Lynch and
Kevin Lynch and yeah.
But let's understand that both their frameworks are very different. I understand that you realize that. Okay, both have their importance. Okay, while a Lynchian framework builds on perception of people, on the idea of the perception of people, how people, and if you see Lynchian methodology of understanding space, Lynch actually takes interviews. Lynch actually makes people draw. He actually, what Lynch does is actually he makes people draw their own cities. And don't think this idea of what you are saying, path, network, jo kya bolta, landmark,
Yeah,
and all these
landmark.
things are just random outcomes. What he has done is he's making millions of people draw their own cities, okay, in Boston especially. And then when he saw those drawings, he was finding similarities. He was finding that there are certain similarities people used to highlight. Okay, and those similarities and those common aspects say he is able to generate that framework of path, node, network. So he's in no way telling you that that is in some way relevant to the Indian city. Mind you, it's our mistake that we use Lynch in the Indian city. It's a complete mistake by urban designers. Okay, Lynch has followed a different method. We should have done the same thing. We should have actually, like, if you have to understand Banaras, you should have taken inhabitants from Banaras, okay, and if they are able to visualize and draw, if they are able to, okay, we should have asked them to draw, and maybe we would have come with a different set of parameters which are very different from path network and whatever landmark that he talks about. So I believe that what you're talking about Lynch, na, it's not so much Lynch's problem. It is our problem. We as urban designers have just and that has been like problem with urban designers who just copy things, not understanding the method which Lynch uses. Okay, and Lynch is in no way. It comes from Lynch's own cultural context. Okay, we should have defined these things in our own cultural context.
So from what I understand, Lynch has been forming this one way of looking at cities, but then it's probably not relevant to all cities all over the
I
world.
personally, if you ask me, no.
Yeah,
If you ask me, no. Absolutely
yeah,
not.
yeah,
Absolutely not. Like today, if you today, like I am telling my group in Banaras, okay, please don't do a Lynchian analysis of Banaras. That's the biggest faux pas you will make here. Oh, the man in the street has like doesn't experience Banaras like that.
yeah,
Okay, if you have to and that's what Lynch did. Lynch actually went to meet the man in the street, a woman in the street. Okay, he did that. He's We are foolish to copy him, but Lynch has been very culturally sensitive. Just to tell you that of Lynch's sensitivity in terms of culture, he has been very culturally sensitive actually.
You're
So
right,
even
Paul.
the sorry,
I think if you were to apply Lynch's method, then you would have to go down to the ground and conduct interviews.
Exactly.
That's the method. The method is
That's
not his analysis. His analysis is
or findings or his findings.
yeah, findings, right? Districts, paths, boundaries. Those are the findings for Boston, for example.
Yeah.
Those might not be the findings for Banaras.
Yeah, exactly.
Banaras
Exactly.
might have.
That's what I'm trying to highlight. That's what I'm trying to highlight. So what I'm trying to highlight, you what a good point. Okay, Lynch का जो method का जो inherent way है, is very culturally sensitive. It's very culturally sensitive. But good point. Sure.
But Dalika,
And Bacon is different. Now Bacon is different. Bacon looks at history, mind you. He doesn't go and meet people in ground. He doesn't.
yeah.
So the question that Paul is asking is a criticism to Bacon's method. I mean, that's the question.
Yeah.
Does anybody see the problems or the fallacies in this method?
Nobody. I can't believe it, yeah. I can't believe it. You all must be aware and conscious of such positions. But the thing is that these positions you're not applying because maybe I'm coming and saying these things. You think these positions are, kya bolta, are very much right. You all are able to not see anything. Can you make a class criticism of Athens? What I showed you? Or a gender criticism of Athens? इससे ज्यादा मैं आपको हिंट नहीं दे सकता हूँ.
Yeah.
No, nothing.
What happens to the, like, for example, in this diagram, the fact that there is the white space, but you have nothing in that white space. I mean, that's my immediate criticism, that the city as perceived only through the kind of rich and only through those in power, primarily white male.
Yeah, yeah,
No?
yeah, exactly.
That's the
Exactly.
perception of the
In fact,
city.
in fact, that procession and the path which you see actually is not the real composition of Athens' ka demography. Okay, so that path, that ritualistic path, which is like analyzed by Bacon, is a what Shirish is saying is a very male centric, like so-called the people who are in power, who rule Athens. Okay, and that's what the problem with Greek democracy is also. Greek democracy always stands for 25% of its population. Greek democracy doesn't. You won't see any women participation. Okay, the question is that true for women? Is that space? Is that experience of the city true for women? Okay, I think those questions should have come into your mind. Or is that space, the spatial experience, true for the Greek slaves who form 50% of the Greek city? 50% of the Greek city is formed by them. Okay, every family has slaves. Okay, is it true for that? Is that experience true? Now, now, what happens to Bacon if you start looking at it from that angle? Okay, ठीक है, हम Bacon को accept करते हैं, and Bacon के method से मैं I look at a gender perspective of Athens. Would my spatial study change? What do you think? Nobody has any response.
Okay, I will pick names again. Somebody is showing something. Mehak, okay, go ahead, Mehak.
I have a question here. Uh, so is Bacon trying to highlight the the difference? I mean, the discrimination here, or his I mean, I'm trying to understand if its methods only derive, if he has a own biased way of looking at things, or he's trying to highlight the development of Athens here.
Okay, whether it's biased or not, I don't know. Maybe he's not biased. Okay, the problem is in some of our methods, embedded in our methods. Okay, realize that we still look at cities. Okay, with how certain section of the population looks at it. Okay, so it's not a question of like wrong or right. It's a question of how power gets played. Okay, not that Bacon is not aware, ऐसा मैं बोलूँगा नहीं. Okay, in fact, today if you read another person, okay, there is another book written by another person who looks at Athens. Okay, it's called Richard Sennett. Okay, that book का नाम है Flesh and Stone in the Western Civilization, if I'm correct. I don't get the name correctly always, but it's called that, Richard Sennett. Okay, now when you look at Sennett's writing about Athens, you will find that he looks at the condition of women in Athens. Okay, he has a very different Athens to explain. Okay, he will tell you about a cloistered Athens. Okay, where the women lives are located. Okay, different understanding of space. Okay, so Edmund Bacon comes with another understanding of space. Please realize that today when you are looking at each of these methods, what we are trying to tell you is that you should understand these are not the only methods. Never take it to be that. These are fundamental principles you can use, but you can use it for many other things. Okay, and that's why I don't want to tell you that Bacon, I could have presented Bacon and kept quiet. and you would have thought bacon is the end all of things. Okay. In fact, I want to problematize my own presentation. Now you tell me to give a understanding of bacon and a critique of bacon. I can do that also. Okay. But when I explained bacon, I explained his viewpoint as if like yes, that's a very important viewpoint, and it's an important viewpoint. It's an important viewpoint about buildings, about spatial systems, and that's where he comes from. He comes from the formal. Okay, but while looking at the formal, like these aspects with these dimensions of form making, okay, or these dimensions can be added to form making is not something which he explores.
Yes, yes, I understood. I got you. I got my answer.
Yeah. Today there are many women scholars, and mind you, the like in urbanism, women scholars are so important. Like I right from person like Jane Jacobs, okay, who's absolutely not a a trained planner, but she has made some very insightful comments about cities. Okay, and it continues. Like you have Jane Jacobs, you have like today you have Ananya Roy, you have Doran Massey, okay, who talks about cities and their experience in extremely different ways.
Yeah. Paul, the book is called Flesh and Stone, The Body and the City in the Western Civilization.
Yeah, they're in a library also. They're in the library. It's written by Richard Sennett, whose experience and methods are absolutely different from Bacon's. But same city he looks into. Okay, any more questions?
I'm thinking next week. I think KP is going to show us and take us through Kevin Lynch's sort of methods and experiments, and also the influence that Kevin Lynch has on urban designers and urban planners and architects. And I find both these sessions as critical to really sort of understanding that in today's context we are perhaps in many ways deploying multiple methods simultaneously, and I'm for example, and this is my criticism also to Bacon's sort of way of doing it is uh, I cannot see Bacon's method directly deployed for our cities here in India as well. For example, a city which is, say, for example, we have a neighborhood called Vadala, and where the neighborhood is so fractured in multiple ways that any diagramming in this particular kind of mode will only reinforce the ghettos further. Where the city is actually sort of parcels of separate kind of subsystems. A mapping like this will show us the which might be interesting to do also in order to reveal those ghettos. And somebody was asking, I think Mahek or someone was asking, is it to actually reveal those kind of segregations in our cities that we can deploy this kind of mapping? Perhaps yes. So my criticism would be that if you're deploying, you deploy it with a pinch of doubt.
And if we have to deploy it also, another thing we have to do is that just take again the basic principles of what Bacon is saying, use the notion of movement, okay, where movement in our cities, okay, are not structured through form like the way like Bacon analyzes but Bacon also, I must tell you, looks at the medieval understanding of Rome, where again very clearly medieval Rome doesn't have this so-called like formal gestures, okay, which the Greek city, the Roman city, or the Baroque city will have. Okay, so in that sense, okay, if you deploy Bacon, let's be careful that the different groups in our cities move differently. Okay, move differently. That is what you have to realize fundamentally. Okay, different. Like today, when some study done by transport planners say ki 50% of our city moves to work walking. Okay, it reveals that actually many people, okay, move in our cities differently. Our cities have not been designed there like that, but their experience is never captured in the spatial like drawings. Okay, so if I have to explore Bacon, I would do it with immense sensitivity. Okay, I would do it with immense sensitivity. Not take up the Baroque drawings of kya bolta, Baroque drawings of Rome and say ki, well, let me find the Baroque structure in my neighborhood. You will never find a Baroque structure in your neighborhood. Absolutely not. Okay, but you might be able to find simultaneous movement systems organized by caste, class, okay, gender, very important, gender, age, very important. And उनका diagram आप बना सकते हो if you want to use a Baconian principle.
Sorry, somebody's saying something. Yeah. Okay. For the other observation I had is that the absence of topography in the conception of space. The absence of, like, for example, Rome is not a flat place at all. Rome is actually very undulated. There are hills. The river itself creates the big valley and things like that. And there seems to be a kind of a superimposition of this kind of classical layer on top of it with the axis and things like that. But the topography actually plays a very important role in structuring Rome, which in his kind of mapping is somehow not featured.
But also he must be telling you the way they have been imagined at that point of time, terrain probably was conceived by these people who apprehended. Like today, I know that in modern times, like with the way modern architecture work, like terrain itself, like you try to flatten the ground always. You try to flatten the whole system. But so that must have been a mode. While when he's looking at the Greek city, he does say that the Greek city is much more sensitive towards terrain. He does say that terrain, but obviously, as I'm saying, that's something which I believe is something which, as a creator, when you take Edmund Bacon forward, you can learn more. You can add these things, obviously, into the.
Okay. Any other questions, observations from the, if not from the students, from the other teachers? In that case, I'll stop recording.
Yeah, no problem.